Hello, this is Shannon Elizabeth Eastman. Welcome. I am the host of the Work That Matters podcast. These are conversations at the intersection of personal and business growth. I'm coming to you from Dublin, Ireland, my office over in Rathmines, just down the road from the canal. And today we're joined by Dr. Kim Jobst out of the UK. We're exploring our relationship with fear, and we're asking questions about how it benefits us to reframe or how we engage fear, what it means to us, and how we play with it. Now, Dr. Kim brings a very interesting perspective. He's both a medical practitioner and a consultant who works in the area of teleology. Teleology, the telos, is the study of meaning and purpose with the end in mind. Now, it is my intention that not only do you enjoy this conversation, but that it shifts your perspective as to what's possible for you today. So another conversation at the intersection of personal and business growth is around fear. In particular, the only thing that we have to fear is fear itself, Roosevelt. Dr. Kim, thank you for the contribution of the Roosevelt quote and for showing up today to have this exploration in and around fear.
It's my pleasure and a privilege.
Likewise. What drew you to this quote?
Oh, I've always loved this quote because it's paradoxical for me. Because fear can hold us back, can stop us moving forwards, can paralyze us and keep us playing small. And it can also save our lives, protect our lives, expand our awareness, enable us to grow, expand our vision, learn new things, and overcome that which has been holding one back. It's transformational.
I had to say the quote over a good few times. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself, suggesting that fear could also show up in the area of an illusion. We perceive it to have some visceral physical attributes when it's more so in the meaning and the size and scale of the thoughts that we attach to that fear.
Oh, absolutely. It's about context.
Yes.
It's about context, and it's about understanding how fear works, both psychologically and physiologically, and dare I say it, spiritually.
Yeah.
When you talk about the size and scale of thoughts, interesting way of putting it. Certainly, it's to do with scope, isn't it?
Well, it's been my experience in the business world. And my perception and my experience has been that when business owners or entrepreneurs or people in a professional context don't necessarily understand the relationship with fear, and I'd also add shame and guilt, they experience it and then they have a desire to step back away from it to allow the fear to dissolve. And then as they show up inside some form of meaningful action, for example, designing a website and putting it online for the whole world to see, announcing their presence, stepping into their service, that can trigger imposter syndrome, or that can trigger, I'm not ready yet, or I'm not good enough, or what will they say, or any one of 100,000 other things. And inside that fear that's triggered by putting their website up and start discussing and announcing their services, they can either step back from it, or they can pause, recognize the fear, the specific fear. For example, if this one is imposter syndrome, and sit with that fear so that they can go within to understand the root that has caused this to kind of surface in this moment, so that they can witness it, heal it, integrate it, and use that, continue moving forward in their business. Did that make sense?
Yeah, it made huge sense. You know it does.
Fear is a gift. Fear, shame, guilt, FSG triangles. I refer to it in the business world as a gift. It is an invitation for you to grow a little bit more into the version of yourself that gets to have whatever that 3-year vision is that you may hold in your mind's eye. And imagine there's a equal and similar analogy in your field of work in medicine. People must experience all sorts of fear when they get certain diagnoses and get invited to do the work to mend or attend to symptoms and disease.
Absolutely. You know very, very well that the example that you've chosen is acute for me, showing up, being seen, announcing one's service to the world, whatever that might be. Imposter syndrome, what do I know, what do I don't know? What you're introducing exquisitely is the whole subject of meaning. And for me, it's when I was actually quite young, it was my father who introduced me to the fact that the root meaning of the word fear is respect. Because I always used to wonder why were we supposed to fear the Lord thy God in the religious texts? Sense to me. If this universe, I'm going to use God and universe interchangeably, is a benevolent, omniscient, omnipotent entity or law function, why on earth should we be afraid of it? And then when I understood that fear means respect, that was something completely different. And then when I looked at the root meaning of the word respect, which is respecto, which is to look again.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Isn't that nice?
That is.
So then we start to dive into the whole concept of feedback.
Fear as a feedback mechanism.
Absolutely. And fear, so if we will touch on and dive into the world of medicine and healing, of science and meaning. Feedback is all important. The whole of life is based on feedback loops of one form or another. And in that context, there is no question in my mind that business is also a very sophisticated feedback mechanism. And it's why, especially today, business is seen more and more as a path to self-actualization. So we have a number of parallels. I beg your pardon?
I just wanted to add the definition of self-actualization that we were discussing in a prior conversation. Self-actualization, which is Maslow, Jung would refer to it as individuation. Even Emerson talked about it, to be yourself. And I think we mutually agreed that it is your potential energy, if you will, made tangible. So the personal growth process that has many names. And self-actualization, though, being the potential that you have becoming tangible. Thank you for that, letting me do that sidebar.
Okay. So can I just add to that? Because
please,
we're talking at the intersection of business and
personal growth.
And I see one component of self-actualization being very specifically intangible.
Go on.
So one of the components of self-actualization, if we're going to use that term, is a growth in understanding, is an increasing depth of perception, is an expansion of meaning. And those are, at one level, completely intangible. They're numinous. But their tangibility comes in the expression of behavior. So we are actually working with that which is tangible in the sense of the growth of a business, the increase of the bottom line, the transformation of a body, the disappearance of symptoms, the healing of disease, the better working of a team in a business in whatever sense, the external and the internal being a sense of well-being, a sense of greater perception and understanding about how things work, transformation in relationships, for example. So they're going hand in hand all the time.
Yep.
And I think it's important because it opens up to us this extraordinary phenomenon of the transformation and manifestation of that which is unseen into that which is seen. Energy becoming matter.
The particle and the antiparticle.
And I think, well, I'm going to steer slightly away from the quantum physics, but and just stay with how energy becomes matter. And we can talk about particles, I guess, in a different
I'm happy to stick with fear and how it shows up in maybe the physical and the business versions. So go ahead.
Because there's real traction in thinking about fear as feedback. So in a physical sense, we need fear.
Yep.
We need fear to protect ourselves. You know, if a tiger comes into my room, I need to be pretty damn careful, and I need my sympathetic nervous system to come online, which is going to shut down all kinds of other things so that I'm alert and I can see solutions and possibilities. And then there's feedback at quite another level, which is feedback in, if we're thinking about a business context or a life context, feedback in relation to relationships, feedback in relation to the severity or potential impact of any given situation.
Well, let's use some easy examples. A marketing campaign. People get feedback from marketing campaigns.
Absolutely.
The initial point of sale, the initial transaction where money is exchanged for a product, good, or service. Feedback from people visiting your website and how long they stay on that website versus they show up and then 10 seconds later, they're like, nope, not for me. Feedback from email campaigns, the number of people who open it and do something with the content of that email versus how many of them just hit delete or unsubscribe. So there's many ways to recognize and understand and use feedback in the business. And yet there's so many who, and I'll use the email in particular, because I hear this a lot. People don't like looking at their stats from their email campaign because they are fearful that they will see a lot of unsubscribes. And then there's another camp of people who are addicted to looking at their data after an email goes out because they are convinced and fearful that there are so many unsubscribes, but they need to see it and sit inside that fear, even though they don't want to. It's very interesting how fear shows up in the business. Go on.
Well, I think also fear has to do with that which is unknown, doesn't it? It's what you've really been saying. We are afraid of that which we don't know and don't understand. But
also people. So in the business context, we fear other people's opinions, right? Mm-hmm. What other people think of us. Public failure is all about other people. So I wonder if there's some truth in, by not truly understanding and knowing myself, I don't truly understand and know other people. Therefore, it's unknown to me. Therefore, I'm scared of it.
Absolutely. Huh. You know somebody's opinion until you ask it. Mm. And because one may be afraid of a negative opinion,
yep,
we therefore don't ask it. And we deny ourselves the opportunity to receive a very positive one or creative feedback. And we also deny ourselves the opportunity to receive information from what might be negative that could transform everything. So befriending fear, when Roosevelt says the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, I think he's inviting a very deep exploration, because being afraid of fear is indicative of the depth of one's understanding of what fear is serving. So befriending fear and recognizing that sympathetic feedback that comes is preparation to take action, which is your great thing, can transform the world in which one lives. So when a patient comes to see me, for example, in the medical world, or when any client comes to see me to do some transformation work, they may be afraid of what might appear.
Yes.
And that needs to be treated accordingly. When I say treated, I mean treated with respect.
Yes.
And space made to understand what those fears are about and what they mean to each person. Yeah. Just as I would imagine in the business world, you are making space for a client to come to you with questions full of fear potentially, treating each one uniquely, although the problem that they bring may be common to just about every business in one form or another.
Yes, true.
You are perhaps a marketing and business physician. Which is an interesting way of looking at it.
It is. It's the first time I'm hearing it, so I'm still processing it. Say more.
Okay, so I'm about to take a quantum leap.
Okay.
So a physician is a healer, in essence. A true physician. That's why I love the word. And what is a healer? My definition of a healer is someone who helps you to see that you have never been anything other than whole, even if you may have what is labeled as a disease. And in the business world, I would imagine that when someone comes to you and they want you to help them to either grow a marketing campaign, put one in order, help them transform their business, help them turn around their teams, because they're coming to you because you are actually a business marketing consultant who has made it very clear that she has a special interest in human behavior. So you're diagnosing what the problem may be, and then you're going to propose a therapeutic pathway. Therapeutic meaning that it brings order to what may appear to be chaotic. Just like a medical physician who helps to bring order, healing, to what appears to be a chaotic situation. Now, there's another step. You with me?
Yep.
So the other step, when my definition of someone who helps you to see that you have never been anything other than whole, depends on, this is the big step, understanding what this means to the person in the context of the meaning and purpose of their life as a whole. And in my experience of you in the business world, you have been relentless. You've been relentlessly pursued by your own conscience and your drive to really understand the context of why people are in business and what you're doing, and why you're doing what you're doing. And when finally you brought together business, structure, and human behavior, you lit up and everything came together.
Yes.
And your productivity increased at least tenfold.
Correct.
So we're at the intersection. We're sitting on the intersection. You are diagnosing through the vehicle of business the meaning and purpose of any individual's life, because that is what is driving them to do what they do.
Yep.
And helping them to see that, and therefore why their things may not be working, and helping them receive the feedback and reframe it in the context of that meaning and purpose so that their business can serve them, which might mean they have to close it down and do something else.
Yep.
And I'm doing the same with the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual lives of the people who come to see me with so-called symptoms. I'm dealing with mental, emotional, and physical symptoms. You're dealing with business symptoms. But what is really interesting, and in a sense completely obvious, so obvious that it's hidden in plain sight, is that what is common to each is the person. Yes?
Absolutely.
So in that context, fear is the gateway.
Fear is the gateway to the freaking game room, everything that you want. I had a really powerful experience recently with a client in the financial services industry a couple months ago. Actually, I'm going to have to say a few months because it was just before COVID. This particular client came to Teach a Brand to Fish to have a marketing presence, packaging and positioning of programs and services, and a sales funnel. And as part of that sales funnel, there was a free face-to-face that would take place between her firm and a financial services outfit. We began to establish the foundation of her marketing presence. So the website was tailored to become a sales tool, not a marketing brochure. And we ran a marketing campaign that ended up with firms in the financial services industry registering through the website to book the free exchange. And I don't want to be specific about that because I want to maintain her privacy. And so she had a free workshop to do, let's say on a Friday, with one of the top 10 financial services firms in the country. And on Wednesday, she came into me to do a dry run. That's the background. And her business partner are in the office doing a dry run. When mid-flow, I stopped it and I said, "Are you okay?" I'm going to call her Sally. I said, "Are you okay, Sally?" And she looked at me and she said, "I'm absolutely not okay. I don't think I'm going to be efficient or successful in front of this first prospect, if you will. I'm terrified. I feel like I'm talking rubbish. I'm making this up as I go. There's no foundation for me to stand on, and I'm just going to mess the bed in front of a really important prospect." And so the fear was palpable in the room and understandable. This is the first time that she was engaging or embarking on something like this. And it was a very high profile prospect for her to be doing that. Imagine 4 or 5 senior directors in a room for her presenting over the course of an hour. And I asked her to put the markers down and to close her eyes and take some deep breaths. Breath work is extraordinarily important. And I asked her to describe the ideal outcome that she sees for this top FS firm if they fully experienced her program. Let's say 3 or 6 months from now, they fully experienced your service and your program within the firm. What would that look like? And she described it. And I asked her to do it in as much detail as possible. And then when I kind of understood the ideal outcome that she saw for this particular firm, I took her through a visualization, and I used symbols and colors, thanks to Carl Jung and the work that I've been studying over there in the background, because they're so important as part of your unconscious self. And so when I asked her to attribute a color and a shape to that completely perfect ideal outcome between her and this financial services firm, she said it was a blue box. And then I invited her to visualize the boardroom of this financial services firm with this blue box on the middle of the table, and the fragrance and the people in the room, and to go into the HR director's office and hear the conversations she's having with the CEO about how great this program had run. And now it took me about 10 minutes to completely run through the visualization with this client in advance of her workshop on the Friday. My eyes were closed, her eyes were closed, and we were standing face to face. Her business partner was sat at the end of the table as we began this exercise. When I opened my eyes, I noticed that her business partner was fully standing and part of this visualization we were doing. And to anchor the process, I invited this person, who I'm calling Sally, to go buy a blue box, a little one, a very visceral, colorful shape representation of what we just anchored within her. And she did. And she took it with her to the workshop on Friday. And I got a call after the workshop on Friday. And the blue box and the visualization was a very powerful part of her being present and poised and successful in the work that she went on to do with this firm. So the fear showed up. I used a technique with which to anchor a very clear outcome within her being, not cerebral. encouraged her to go and buy a visual representation that she could put on her office desk, take into these free face-to-face exchanges she's doing, so that every time she saw it, there would be an energetic exchange. The box represented something to her because she attached meaning to it. And so anytime she saw that blue box, the meaning that she was reflected back to her was the perfect ideal outcome, already tangible, already manifested in the business or businesses that work with me. That has led to a number of other examples that she's taken. Fear shows up and she pauses now and says, what do I want the ideal outcome to be? And then does this visualization. So it's one way of being able to play with fear in the moment, particularly if you have a deadline the next day with an important prospect. But if we went back to 20 minutes ago, and thank you for letting me share that example. If we went back to 20 minutes ago, you were saying that fear is a very important feedback mechanism. All of life is, but fear, we're focusing on fear here. Fear is an invitation from universe or from your reality to pause. What's the etymology of respect? Look again.
Look again.
I really, really like that. I'll just use that. When the fear shows up, it is your invitation to look again and explore the underbelly of why it's shown up for you, and or use techniques depending on how quickly you have to act to mitigate it.
Absolutely. The same is true in any disease.
How so?
Well, first of all, you need to understand what it is that's going on. Unpack it. And then contextualize it.
Yeah.
And that's where the paradigm in which you're doing it is so important. I suspect that she could have gone to any number of other marketing / business consultants who would never have taken her into such a woo-woo process that actually gave her a completely different context.
Yeah.
That actually addressed the way the human mind works. So it's actually very grounded, although might not appear to be in certain circles, and so enabled her energy to flow in a completely different way because she had a different perception, a different meaning, and a different symbol. And the same is true, in my experience, for all disease.
I was inviting her in that moment to allow us to connect the mind-body experience. Particularly in the areas that I work in, there tends to be a lot of cerebral individuals, not necessarily people who have synthesized the heart and the mind. And I think the mind-body connection is extraordinary and something that it's deeply important to me, and I'm very interested in. But I think there is a space with which we get to operate in when the mind-body is deeply connected, that the cerebral only version of us, one, cannot fathom, and two, is reluctant to access, reluctant to move into. Maybe fear, maybe a lack of understanding. But I do know that when Sally went into that visualization and that breath work with me in preparation for a free workshop, I do know that she had a moment to experience a mind-body connection that served her and shifted her, that is going to have her keep coming back, whether it's with me or anyone else or on her own. It will invite her to keep coming back and revisiting how to engage the mind-body through breath work. I think it was you who told me once upon a time, can't remember, that our breath is the single thing that we share with our unconscious self.
I remember saying that. I don't remember saying that. And I mean, that's a That's quite a big exploration. I don't think it's the single thing.
Physical.
But our breath engages the autonomic nervous system in a very profound way, and also our breath engages the unconscious and the unconscious neurological processes and mind. It changes our chemistry. It changes our physiology. And we can do that within one breath. It brings attention from the monkey mind that is wearing off in the realms of fear, into the body, into the organism. And when that happens, it's like a lightning conductor. It's really quite remarkable. And then when you engage the process of visualization, you are triggering your entire organism. So let's come back. The brain does not distinguish between that which it can perceive in imagination and that which is occurring on the outside. So perhaps the whole of the outside is imagination anyway. We know that what we perceive as the result of neural processes that are going on in the brain.
Yep.
That's really important. We also know that perception and meaning go hand in hand and simultaneously impact every single one of the cells in the body. So visualization is an immensely powerful tool. And actually, when one unpacks fear, very often people have a visual representation of what they think might be happening, whether they're afraid of dying, whether they're afraid of being crippled, whether they're afraid of needles, whether they're afraid of drugs, whether they're afraid of having to see the tax man, make a presentation, deal with their team. There is some kind of visualization that is giving rise to the whole edifice of fear. So if, when we're cooking, let's say, we come to learn about the power and potential of heat. And we come to learn about the potential and power of heat as a result, usually, of having been burned or nearly burned. We're educated and we're taught. Nobody takes us aside, at least nobody took me aside at school, and said, fear is a form of heat. You need to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to control it, how to turn it up, how to turn it down, how to use it to drive, to fuel your life.
What a brilliant analogy. I love that. So in wrapping up this conversation, I just want to invite that quote to come back. Do you have it to hand? Can you read it?
Yeah. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
So if I invited you to summarize the conversation in light of this quote, just in a couple sentences, what would that look like for you?
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. What that means to me is that the only thing we have to fear is being taken over by.
Wow, yeah.
Coordinating to fear, rather than understanding that fear is a fuel, a vehicle, a means of transformation.
A means of transformation. Fear is a means of transformation. Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation and I learned a lot. It was really great. I look forward to having you back a few more times to explore conversations at the intersection of personal and business growth. Dr. Kim, namaste, brother.
Namaste. Thank you, Shannon.
The Work That Matters podcast, it's brought to you by ShannonEastman.com.